They are the tip of the spear, the shadow behind every landing craft, the unseen eyes deep inside hostile territory. For nearly 70 years, Force Reconnaissance Marines have operated where few others dare to go, deep behind enemy lines, into the most dangerous and unforgiving environments on Earth. Tasked with gathering critical intelligence, Force Recon Marines silently infiltrate hostile shorelines, dense jungles, arid deserts, and rugged mountains. Their mission is to observe, report, and, when necessary, to strike with precision and speed. They are the eyes and ears of the Marine Expeditionary Forces, preparing the battlefield for the units which follow. Unlike conventional reconnaissance, Force Recon goes deeper, moving further ahead and staying longer, often in complete isolation, relying on their skill, stealth, and sheer determination. Their operations range from covert surveillance and target acquisition to amphibious reconnaissance and direct action raids. Every mission demands a combination of mental resilience, physical endurance, and tactical expertise, honed through some of the most rigorous training in the military. Their story begins in the shadows of the Cold War, forged from necessity in a time where global tension called for a new breed of Marine, one capable of operating seamlessly in the sea, on land, and from the air. From the dense jungles of Vietnam to the deserts of the Middle East, Force Recon Marines have often been the first in and the last out, delivering crucial intelligence and executing high-risk missions that often decide the outcome of larger battles. They operate in the silence of night, moving unseen and unheard, often relying on little more than a compass, their wits, and a fierce determination to survive. Their actions are measured, deliberate, and precise, designed to gather intelligence that commanders cannot afford to lose, or to disrupt enemy plans before a battle even begins. They are perhaps not a household name, with their actions often going unrecognized outside classified reports and whispered legends. But in the world of military special operations, their reputation is formidable, their training is relentless, and their resolve unbreakable. This is the story of Force Recon, the Marines who scout the shadows, shape the battlefield, and disappear like a ghost in the night. Welcome to Wars of the World. The origins of Force Recon stretch back to World War II and the Korean War. They began with the Observation Group and Raider Battalions for the United States Marine Corps, USMC, formed in early 1942 to gather intelligence on enemy-held beaches and to support amphibious landings in the Pacific. These units evolved, expanding into the Amphibious Recon Company, which saw action at Abimama, Tinian, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, conducting reconnaissance and hydrographic surveys, these being essential when planning landings. After the Korean War, in the tense early years of the Cold War, the USMC found itself rethinking how it would fight the next war, one that might not resemble the island-hopping campaigns of the Pacific, but instead demand silent precision, rapid insertion, and the ability to operate far beyond the front lines. From this new way of thinking, Force Reconnaissance was born. In July 1957, the first Force Reconnaissance Company was officially established at Camp Pendleton, under the command of then Lieutenant Colonel Bruce F. Myers. This unit was created to serve as the eyes and ears of the Fleet Marine Force at the operational and strategic level, operating not just ahead of the infantry, but far beyond them. Whereas division reconnaissance units were tasked with more traditional battlefield surveillance, typically within the range of artillery support, Force Recon was conceived for deep reconnaissance, penetrating 50 kilometers or more into hostile territory, often without support, and sometimes without even the knowledge of friendly ground forces nearby. Historically, a recon battalion may contain both Force Recon and Standard Division Recon companies, but Force Recon's remit extended deeper into enemy terrain to serve Marine Expeditionary Force, also known as MEF, level requirements. Two mission sets came to define Force Recon's tactical identity. Green Operations, or Deep Reconnaissance, emphasize stealth, observation, and reporting of enemy ground conditions, often conducted light and fast. Patrols infiltrated far inland, well beyond the reach of naval gunfire or artillery, and gathered battlefield intelligence, set up drop zones or landing beaches, or assessed damage after strikes. In contrast, Black Operations involved direct action, limited raids, maritime interdiction, and visit board search sieges or VBSS missions, targeting vessels or critical infrastructure. While Force Recon originally retained hostage rescue capability, that function has since been moved to other Marine SOCOM units. By the Vietnam era, Force Recon had fully embraced both roles. Keyhole intelligence patrols slipped silently into enemy territory, and Stingray operations shifted dynamically into offensive engagements whenever opportunities arose. The versatility to switch from observation to action on short notice became a hallmark of the Force Recon ethos. Notably, becoming a Force Recon Marine remains among the most demanding paths in US military service. Candidates must first complete infantry training, typically as 0311 riflemen, or in rare cases via a lateral transfer from other military occupational specialties, or MOSs, following a successful recon screening. Next comes the Reconnaissance Training and Assessment Program, more commonly known as RTAP, a brutal 5-week crucible pushing every candidate to the limit of physical and mental endurance. Ocean swims, knot tying under pressure, mountain navigation, rucking, and intense combat conditioning. Only around 40% pass this filter to continue. Those who survive RTAP enter the Basic Reconnaissance Course, or BRC, a grueling 12-week program at the School of Infantry West, averaging 15-hour days. Training immerses candidates in amphibious operations, heliborne insertion and extraction, land navigation, communications, clandestine infiltration, small unit tactics, and the fundamentals of naval gunfire and close air support coordination. Even then, graduating from BRC is not the end of their journey. Each newly minted 0321 Recon Marine then undergoes specialized follow-on training, a basic airborne and multi-mission parachute course, Marine Combatant Diver course, and a 2-week stint at SERE school, standing for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. Only then is an operator fully qualified for fleet assignment. This pipeline exists to nurture the silent, swift, and lethal ethos that defines Force Recon. In the high-risk world of behind enemy lines operations, the difference between mission success and compromise often lies not in weaponry, but in stealth, precision tradecraft, and mental discipline. After enduring nearly 40 weeks of continuous rigorous training, a newly minted Recon Marine is finally ready and qualified to embrace their motto, Celer Silens Mortalis, meaning swift, silent, and deadly. Force Recon's baptism of fire came in the Vietnam War, where their deep penetration patrols reshaped how intelligence was gathered, and, when required, how precision action followed. From the mid-1960s onwards, Marine Force Recon teams stealthily operated across 1st Corps and beyond, navigating triple canopy jungle, booby-trapped trails, and PAVN patrols with meticulous discipline and deadly restraint. These missions mirrored those of Army long-range reconnaissance patrols, but with more firepower, larger patrols, and greater autonomy. While Division LRRP teams counted 5 or 6 men, typical Force Recon patrols included 7 to 10 Marines, armed and ready to call in artillery or air support at a moment's notice. One of their earliest audacious deployments was Operation Hastings in July to August 1966, when 1st Force Recon rappelled into the rock pile, an isolated rocky outcrop overlooking the DMZ or demilitarized zone. From that vantage, they spotted concentrations of PAVN, the Vietnamese army, and called in artillery, prompting heavy casualties. This approach, silent tiny teams inserted deep into enemy territory, and then coordinating devastating strikes, laid the groundwork for what came to be known as Stingray patrols. Moving into 1967, Force Recon brought up the Stingray Doctrine in full force. Tiny units inserted via helicopter into hostile territory to gather critical enemy troop locations and supply routes. When enemy concentrations were discovered, they coordinated devastating airstrikes or artillery response. Bruce "Doc" Norton, a Navy corpsman with the 3rd Force Recon in 1969, would later chronicle these operations in Stingray, Force Recon Marines Behind Enemy Lines in Vietnam, and in Force Recon Diary 1969, each highlighting the unit's high-risk versatility. His first-hand accounts recall tense patrols through the A Shau Valley and DMZ, ambushes, hot landing zones, and embattled extractions. His unit earned a valorous unit citation, one of only 2 Marine units to do so during the war. But arguably, the most legendary mission of Vietnam-era Force Recon involves 2nd Lieutenant James "Jim" Capers Jr. in March to April 1967. As a battlefield commissioned officer, he led 9 Marines and a dog named King into the jungles near Phu Loc to investigate a suspected PAVN regimental base and to guard the flank of 3rd Battalion 26th Marines. The patrol encountered 2 enemy contacts on the second day, killing 22 PAVN soldiers but taking casualties themselves. On the final day, a daisy-chained claymore ambush shattered Capers' legs and rained bullets across the team. Despite his injuries, he coordinated artillery, air and mortar support, directed his Marines' evacuation, and refused extraction until every other man and the dog were safely loaded, at great cost to himself. Capers later reflected, quote, "If I was going to die there in Vietnam, I was going to die fighting. That was just the way we fought. You go out fighting. You kill as many enemies as you could, and that would mean they could not further fight your guys or other American troops." End quote. He remained conscious, continuing to direct fire missions right up until evac. His leadership ensured that all 9 members survived, and Capers was later awarded the Silver Star, and a congressional effort is now pushing to upgrade it to the Medal of Honor. These patrols demanded ingenuity. Teams used claymore mines, pre-plotted artillery, bait-and-switch harbor sites, and silent signaling wires to evade detection, and to create ambiguity for NVA trackers. One team leader, Captain George Digger Odell, even recalled moving positions at dusk, only to watch PAVN sweep over the abandoned site at night, proof that his deception had worked. Force Recon's missions blended patient reconnaissance with immediate action. When teams detected sizable enemy units, they didn't attempt direct engagement. Rather, they called in supporting fire, then withdrew under cover. Often their role would shift mid-patrol, from observers into tactical target designators or forward air controllers, bridging stealth with lethal force. By the war's end, Force Recon's legacy was secure. Their ability to insert covertly, remain undetected, gather high-value battlefield intelligence, and then seamlessly call in strikes changed the paradigm of jungle warfare. They were the eyes of the MEF, silent scouts who could bring destruction with a radio call. In the dense jungles of Vietnam, Force Recon earned a reputation for being small, agile, and resolutely determined, the first in, deep inside enemy territory, and often the last out after fulfilling their mission. The Stingray teams, the LRRPs, the medals, the losses, and eventual unit-level citations all testify to a paradox. These small groups could shape entire operations while often remaining invisible themselves. After the turbulent years in Vietnam, Force Recon faced both institutional uncertainty and doctrinal renewal. The defeat in Southeast Asia and sweeping post-war cuts forced the Marine Corps to reassess its identity. As historian Henry I. Shaw Jr. notes, quote, "The Corps struggled to find its place in a post-Vietnam defense landscape," end quote. Even facing critics who question the relevance of amphibious forces in a nuclear Cold War context. Yet by the late 1970s and into the 80s, the Marines reaffirmed their maritime forward doctrine, especially from the sea, a strategic concept emphasizing amphibious access and coastal dominance. Amid this broader shift, Force Recon steadily adapted. Following partial deactivation, First Force Recon was reactivated in 1986, rebuilding its capabilities in deep reconnaissance and direct action. Its revival coincided with the emergence of the Marine Expeditionary Unit Special Operations Capable, or MEUSOC, in 1987, ushering in Force Recon's integration into forward-deployed, agile Marine task forces. By the late Cold War era, Force Recon's mission was clear: conduct amphibious and deep ground reconnaissance, scout landing zones and urban zones, implant sensors, and prepare the battlefield for expeditionary forces. The unit continued to refine pioneering capabilities, such as Halo parachute insertion, submarine-inserted amphibious patrols, and helicopter rappelling behind enemy lines. While many Cold War-era activities remain classified, speculation and planning documents suggest Force Recon prepared extensively for operations in Europe, deploying to northern Norway, Iceland, or Denmark by air or sea in a conventional Soviet threat scenario. Strategic exercises like Bold Guard rehearsed such contingencies, positioning Marine brigades and reconnaissance forces to hold critical northern approaches. Though specific deployments were seldom publicly confirmed, Force Recon was an available deep coverage recon and early warning asset in NATO's planning. In 1990, the Gulf War had begun, and the unit was deployed as part of Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. First Force Recon deployed to Kuwait, setting up covert observation posts and executing motorized patrols along the Iraqi border. Their deep reconnaissance teams located moving enemy armored units, and, when contact occurred, coordinated artillery or close air support strikes, often from afar. These operations showcase their ability to blend stealth with decisive battlefield impact. Simultaneously, SOCOM's transformation, beginning in 1980, had begun paying dividends. Though Force Recon remained outside full Special Operations command control, their integration with MEUSOC meant their tactics meshed with joint operational norms. Desert Storm saw them operating in close coordination with Army and Navy special operators on scud hunting missions, CSAR support, and psychological operations targeting Iraqi troops. Force Recon's role during Desert Storm also reflected the evolution of broader Marine Corps doctrine. The shift from large-scale amphibious assaults to rapid maneuver and precise targeting meant that reconnaissance teams were critical to initiating strikes, designating targets, and shaping the battlefield in the opening hours. As part of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, Force Recon helped anchor the Corps' offensive thrust into Iraq. Following Desert Storm, Force Recon continued to perform maritime interdiction and extraction missions, with MEUs in humanitarian operations across East Timor, Somalia, and beyond. Deployments that showcase their adaptability and core skill sets in amphibious environments. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, Force Recon matured from a Vietnam-era reconnaissance entity into a sophisticated reconnaissance direct action force. Its doctrine balanced covert observation with tactical strikes, enabling MEUs to deploy with confidence in austere environments. As Cold War tensions faded, Force Recon transitioned seamlessly into large-scale operations in Kuwait and humanitarian missions worldwide, always defined by deep insertion, precise observation, and the capacity to call in force when needed. The period between Vietnam and Desert Storm thus marks a critical evolution. Force Recon reaffirmed its maritime expedience, re-established its force identity, and demonstrated operational value in both combat and non-combat missions. When the time came to strike into Kuwait, the recon teams were once again among the first into hostile terrain, and remaining until the end of the conflict. On September 20th, 2001, following the 9/11 attacks, President George W. Bush declared his global war on terror, with Force Recon Marines being deployed almost immediately. In late 2001 and early 2002, MEUSOC filled a critical gap. These units, containing Force Recon detachments, spearheaded operational access in Afghanistan. They carried out clandestine raids and reconnaissance missions, sometimes in terrain only loosely understood by conventional forces. Their early insertion into Kandahar and activity around Camp Rhino marked Force Recon's transition from Cold War-era doctrine into a new battlefield. Defense Media Network describes how these Marines helped establish the first forward base in Afghanistan. Quote, "The 15th redefined amphibious assault, launching from Navy ships in the North Arabian Sea to a point more than 400 miles inland, the longest and largest movement of an MEU from its sea base in history. Seizing a remote airfield some 90 miles southwest of Kandahar, Afghanistan's second largest city, the Marines set up the first American forward operating base in that nation, Camp Rhino." End quote. In Iraq, Force Recon significantly contributed during the 2003 invasion. Generation Kill, the book written by embedded journalist Evan Wright, records his ride-alongs with the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, but the same deep recon capability was mirrored by Force Recon teams, scouting ahead of armoured columns, marking enemy positions, and calling in fire support. Sergeant Brad Colbert, a Force Recon mentor figure, whose company's actions appear throughout Generation Kill, highlights how Marines integrated intelligence and rapid strike in urban and desert environments. Perhaps the most dramatic shift began in 2003 to 2004 with the formation of Detachment 1. Commanded by a former 1st Recon officer, Colonel Robert Coates, Detachment 1 deployed to Iraq in mid-2004 alongside Navy SEALs and Delta Force under JSOC. Its team of 81 Marines and 5 Navy corpsmen passed Naval Special Warfare certification and operated as part of joint raids and surveillance missions. JSOC's conclusion was clear: Force Recon Marines were domain proficient and capable operators in direct action and special reconnaissance. In 2006, Detachment 1's success solidified the creation of MARSOC, the Marine Corps Special Operations Command. East and West Coast Force Recon companies were dissolved, with approximately 75% of their personnel forming the initial 1st and 2nd Marine Special Operations Battalions, or MSOBs, while the remainder stayed in new reconnaissance battalions, aligned under conventional Marine divisions. Force Recon's collaborative role with JSOC, SEALs, and the CIA accelerated during this period. JSOC, under General Stanley McChrystal, restructured around tightly networked intelligence efficiency and cross-agency cooperation. CIA analysts, NSA reports, and NGA imagery became immediate force multipliers. Force Recon operators provided critical direct action capability, utilizing this smart intel framework. McChrystal's network model, which McChrystal himself likened to learning from Al-Qaeda's relationships-based operational style, thrived on small teams with intelligence, speed, and decision-making at their cores. From 2006 through to the early 2010s, MARSOC's Marine Raiders, largely descended from Force Recon, conducted special reconnaissance and direct action in both Iraq and Afghanistan. The 2007 deployment to Afghanistan saw Marine Raider elements commanding regional JSOC task forces, conducting target interdiction and foreign internal defense missions. Despite being embedded into MARSOC, many Recon Marines maintained affiliation with MEU deployments, especially in maritime interdiction and anti-piracy missions. Their amphibious insertion techniques, halo jump competency, submarine boarding, and VBSS heritage remained core strengths within Marine Special Operations, now integrated into MARSOC's identity, but still rooted in Force Recon doctrine. In 2008, the Commandant of the Marine Corps directed that the Force Recon companies be re-established from Division Reconnaissance Battalion personnel to support the 3 Marine Expeditionary Forces. One commanding officer, Captain Anthony Mercado, during the reactivation of Force Recon after MARSOC drawdown, remarked, quote, "When Force Recon was removed to make MARSOC, the Marine Expeditionary Force lost its deep recon asset. Reactivating the company today brings this asset, along with battle space shaping, special insertion capability, jump, dive freefall, high glide, etc. to the MEF." End quote. Veterans of Detachment 1 and early Raider deployments have since described their operations as standing shoulder to shoulder with SEALs and Army Special Operations Forces in direct action ops, while maintaining their own doctrinal identity in reconnaissance. Through the global war on terrorism era, Force Recon's contribution morphed from a traditional deep recon force into something broader. Tactical intelligence collectors, battlefield shapers, and joint force enablers who would embed, observe, call fire, undertake raids, and warehouse amphibious special insertion techniques under fire. Into the present day, Force Recon remains a vital reconnaissance asset embedded within each Marine Expeditionary Force. Organized into 3 active companies, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Force Reconnaissance Companies, supplemented by a reserve component under 4th Recon. These companies operate directly under MEF command, not through Special Operations Command, and deliver amphibious and ground reconnaissance, surveillance, battle space shaping, and limited direct action raids in support of Marine air-to-ground task forces and other joint forces. By early 2025, there were more than 2,000 Recon Marines on active duty, up from approximately 500 in 2001, reflecting a substantial rebirth of Force Recon company strength following the drawdown and reconstitution. Recon continues to support MEUs and MEF level deployments, and also provides reconnaissance support for US Marine Littoral Regiments, or MLRs, operating in the Indo-Pacific under the Force Design 2030 concept, a doctrinal pivot to multi-domain littoral sensing formations. In routine training, for example the annual Recon Challenge at Camp Pendleton, teams prove their physical, mental, and tactical readiness via a 25-mile ordeal, including open ocean swimming, weapons tasks, navigation, and obstacle courses. These events embody the swift, silent, deadly ethos celebrated by the Recon community. Notable modern operations reveal Force Recon's continued relevance. In February 2025, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion conducted maneuvers with the 3rd Marine Littoral Regiment in the Philippines, integrating small unit amphibious recon, unmanned aerial systems, and ground observation in support of expeditionary basing and maneuver operations. Teams inserted by Osprey and MRZR vehicles collected real-time data to shape command-level decisions, a textbook example of battle space shaping today. Force Recon's reputation within military circles remains stellar and occasionally contentious. While deeply respected for their reconnaissance tradecraft and amphibious insertion skills, the unit is often compared to SOCOM units. They train at near Special Operations Forces level, yet retain MEF control, which ultimately limits their employment in joint high-end direct action missions. Marine leadership has sometimes lamented that the Corps lacks its own SOCOM-level asset equivalent to Ranger or Delta. Still though, that unique positioning grants Force Recon direct support to the MEF commander in austere littoral and land operations. Culturally, Force Recon has inspired numerous portrayals in books, documentaries, and video games, underscoring the mystique around their deep cover, high-risk missions. Inside military circles, they are often regarded as the unsung maritime reconnaissance force, capable of stealth infiltration and battlefield shaping without the institutional fanfare of SOCOM units. Force Recon's influence also resonates beyond the Corps itself. Other nations' amphibious and special reconnaissance units look to Force Recon doctrine, selection, and training for benchmark standards, especially in littoral reconnaissance, Halo and HAHO insertion, and VBSS expertise. Their techniques have been mirrored in foreign SOF units and regional Allied recon forces. Today's Force Recon stands as a hybrid, an MEF-level reconnaissance group capable of deep infiltration, surveillance, sensor emplacement, and limited direct action, shaped by nearly 7 decades of evolving doctrine. Their legacy as both Marine scouts and battlefield enablers continues robustly into the present. Small, silent, precise, and anchored in the ethos of initial insertion to shape information terrain, and often being the last to leave after enabling others to fight. Force Recon's journey stretches from the clandestine Cold War beginnings through the crucibles of Vietnam, the deserts of Iraq, and the mountains of Afghanistan, evolving all the while into a unit defined by stealth, precision, and strategic impact. Originating as a handful of clandestine insertions by early Pathfinders, they became indispensably entwined with Joint Special Operations and Expeditionary Marine Doctrine. Even as MARSOC rose, Force Recon endured, reborn, resilient, and refocused under MEF commanders as a distinct reconnaissance force. Today, as part of each Marine Expeditionary Force, Force Recon continues to execute missions demanding deep reconnaissance, sensor emplacement, and battlespace shaping. Their green operations, covert observation, amphibious scouting, and damage assessments remain the staple of their mission set, while black tasks, such as limited direct action raids or VBSS, continue to complement their core remit. Within military circles, Force Recon retains a reputation for elite reconnaissance tradecraft and amphibious insertion expertise. While comparisons with SOCOM units remain a point of institutional debate, Recon Marines are universally respected for operating stealthily with austere support, yet retaining independence under MEF command. In essence, Force Recon exemplifies the enduring ethos of first in and last out. Over nearly 7 decades, they have remained covert scouts, tactical intelligence gatherers, and maritime battlefield shapers. They arrive early to map hostile terrain, deploying sensors, enabling fire support, and then receding back into the shadows. They are not the loudest in the room, But when the mission demands silence, precision, and nerves of steel, Force Recon answers first and endures until the end.